my Hollywood love story.
I saw a couple positive posts about people sharing their love stories, so I figured I'd share mine. I, 23F, met my boyfriend, Brian, 20 Bymers, at a party. I saw him across the room and he was gorgeous. He's a really beautiful person. Blue eyes, blonde hair, he's in great shape. I think he's perfect. I decided to go over and chat with him. We were chatting and this other guy came up and made a couple comments about his height. I asked what that was about, and apparently the other guy was his stepbrother, Chad. Brian said that Chaz always made jabs about his height because he's 6'0" and Brian was 5'10". I'm only 5'6", 5'9" in heels, so I thought Brian was the perfect height for me. I told him this, and his face seemed to light up a bit. Chad came over a couple other times and kept making jabs at Brian's height and appearance, and he kept telling me that any guy under 6 isn't a real man. I kept wanting to say something, but Brian kept saying it was better to not give him a reaction. Chaz came over to trash Brian 6 times in an hour, and I had enough. The 7th time Chaz came over, he started telling me not to waste my time on Brian because he's under 6 too. But I cut him off. I said, "Yeah, and you're barely at 60. The fact that you keep bringing Brian down makes you sound so insecure." He left us alone after that, and Brian and I ended up making out. Long story short, we ended up going out, and we've been dating for the last year and a half. Chaz still occasionally makes jabs about Brian's height and appearance, but Brian started shutting him down. Brian's a pretty mild-mannered person, and I really love that about him. My friends love him too. He even said that me being with him helped his self-confidence. To be honest, when we first started dating, it surprised me how low his self-confidence was because he's so hot. He's perfect in my eyes. Anyway, kinda pointless story about us, but my friends think it's cute.
Homeless man by the art store.
I'm a college student, and one day I has to go buy some art supplies at an art supply store because I ran out of supplies. I barely had money on me, and I didn't even know if I would have been able to buy all the things that I needed. I go to art school. I ended up getting a few things. As I was walking out of the store, an old man approached me, and at first I couldn't understand what he was saying because of all the car noises, but after a little while, I realized that the man was asking for some money or for anything that could help him buy a pair of shoes. The man was dirty and was barefoot. I told him that I had no money left, and I walked away. All I had on me was $4 in cash. I walked away from him, and when I was about 8 or 10 feet away from him, I stopped, and I don't know why, but I felt like I had to help him somehow. I ended up taking the last $4 I had in cash and gave it to him. I quickly turned around and walked back to the dorms. As I was heading back to the dorms, I started crying because I kept complaining about the fact that I had no money while that man probably had nothing. A few days later, I went back to the same art store to get more art supplies and found the same homeless man. He was still wearing the same clothes as when I had last seen him, but this time, he had on some shoes. Looking at him made me smile, and I thanked God for that.
Caught feelings for my ex again. Should I ignore them?
I recently discovered I've developed feelings for my ex again. Should I ignore them? We've been ex for 3 years and started dating when we were teens, which lasted about 2 or 3 years. But we were always sort of mutual after the breakup. After recently spending more time with them, I've realized that I've been thinking of them more often and have even dreamt of them a few times even. And the feelings were confirmed when I had seen them in person after a visit. Now I'm not sure how I should go about this. I'm contemplating cutting them off so I could deal with the feeling I'm having. I feel this way because I broke up with them in the first place. 3 years ago, after noticing that we weren't able to mature normally depending on each other as we were, and that our relationship wasn't growing into a healthy one, to be more specific, I wanted to do things with my life that I didn't think I'd be able to do with him because we didn't have the same aspirations and was also still just young, still young now, when it happened. But now I'm seeing them put in the effort that I was desperately looking for around the time of our breakup, and it's attractive. It makes me happy to see because they seem really happy. but I don't want to ruin that for them, especially if they'd never see me that way again. I also don't want to ruin the relationship we have now by being the only one who feels this way. I'd rather continue to watch them grow, happily. But another part of me hopes that maybe he does feel the same way, and what if I miss what could be something with a great person because I don't want to take that chance. Also, until a week ago, I didn't have any attraction toward this person and thought I'd only ever look at them as family. But I suppose my feelings changed. Reddit. What should I do? Please help. Also, the growth that they are experiencing is growth in their own lives. In the relationship, I was the only one who was growing as a person. I felt like I was the only one who was growing up and wanting different things in their lives when they were just wanting the same thing and was okay with it. But now they are growing as a person. And that's what's attractive, maybe, is that they are finding themselves and not being complacent.
Just shrimp.
Imagine this. You walk into Red Lobster on a stormy Wednesday evening. You sit down with your wife and 2 kids. The waiter comes by to take your order as you hungrily ask for the endless shrimp. 15 minutes later, everybody is served. Your wife and kids ordered the endless shrimp as well. As the night morphs into inky blackness outside, you all talk and laugh and eat. You eat plate after plate after plate of shrimp. After a couple hours, you and your family are stuffed. You motion to the waiter to bring the bill and look down at your plate, letting out a small chuckle. It looks like you haven't even eaten a single bit of shrimp. A curious thing, since you have been gorging yourself on shrimp constantly for the better part of 2 hours. But before you can puzzle over this small oddity any longer, the waiter bustles over to your table and hands you the bill. As you reach over to grab the check, your hand closes instead around a squishy pile of shrimp. There is no check being held out to you, just another plate of shrimp. A loud thunderclap booms outside as you look up at the waiter to ask why he brought you more shrimp instead of the check, when you are suddenly alarmed to find not the waiter, but a giant, human-sized shrimp in server attire staring blankly down at you. You spin around in your seat to see if your wife can see the shrimp waiter and are immediately frightened out of your wits. Your wife is no longer seated there next to you. Only another human-sized shrimp wearing your wife's dress and hoop earrings. Numb with horror, you quickly glance across the table at your 2 children. They are both shrimps. You let out a yell as another thunderclap echoes across the sky and it begins to rain. You distantly register the start of the torrential downfall outside, which sounds like large hail as you spare a sweeping glance across the restaurant. There are no humans present. There are only shrimps seated at booths, shrimps seated at tables, and even a small group of shrimps at the bar. They are all eating large platefuls of shrimp and leering at you menacingly. Your heart begins to pound in your chest like a war drum. You stumble backwards, half falling over your chair in your haste to get up. You sprint for the door and run outside into the dark, stormy night. As you dash through the parking lot towards your car, you feel something like a giant hot raindrop hit your face and bounce off towards the ground. Looking down, you see a shrimp lying on the ground. You look out across the parking lot and see puddles of shrimp collecting in the cracks in the pavement and across the roofs of the closest cars. Another warm object strikes your head. It's literally raining shrimp. You find your car and fumble, hands shaking uncontrollably, with your keys. Finally unlocking the car, you slip inside and engage the door locks. The human-sized shrimp from the restaurant are now congregating outside the front doors, staring across the parking lot at you. Their pale orange-pink bodies eerily backlit from the light streaming out from the open doors behind them. You try to cram the key into the ignition, but it folds against the ignition plate and squishes in your hand. You look down. There are no car keys, only several mangled shrimp on a key ring in your trembling hand. You punch the steering wheel in frustration, accidentally setting off the car alarm. The shrimps outside the restaurant hear the noise and hungrily start to advance across the parking lot towards you. You try in vain to cram the shrimp key into the ignition, but you know it is pointless. The shrimp slowly approach the car and surround it, rocking it back and forth, pressing their slimy bodies against the frame. You hear the fiberglass doors groan under the pressure as one of the rear windows shatters, spraying the back seat of the car with fragments of glass. You know there is no hope left. There is no escape. White-faced and shaking, you reach across the console and open the glove box. Crammed under the insurance papers and a pile of napkins is the Glock 19 you always bring with you when you leave the house. You pull the gun from its holster and pause for a fraction of a second that holds an eternity. With tears streaming down your face, you put the gun to the roof of your mouth, trying not to imagine what it feels like to die, only forcing yourself to think of your wife and kids. You close your eyes. Then you pull the trigger. A singular shrimp comes zooming out of the barrel into your mouth. In your darkest hour, death itself refuses to end you. For death is not the end. There can only be shrimp, and they are endless. You look to your right, and all you see are shrimp for miles. Just shrimp. You say to yourself quietly, just shrimp.
Thank you for watching Reddit Stories. Please feel free to leave a like and subscribe. May you all have a blessed day.